They have this vision of creating a Grand Cru from scratch in China. And so they asked Tony Jordan, that was working for them at this stage, to answer the question, is there a terroir capable to create a Grand Cru in China? And if yes, where it will be?
Let's talk a little bit how you ended up in this remarkable place, because some of our listeners aren't going to know the story. So originally, Dr. Tony Jordan, who's passed away, was hired by LVMH to make the best red wine in China. And it took him years. He looked everywhere. He eliminated more of the regions that people might have thought of and said, no, this is the place, right? And prior to that, I think it was Catholic missionaries had built little churches up there, planted some vineyards because they were trying to get to Tibet, be as close to Tibet as possible. And then they were expelled in the 50s, and there were Catholic Chinese people who were there tending the vineyards that still existed. Does that vineyard still exist?
Yeah, so the first vine has been planted by missionary end of 19th century, French or Swedes, Switzerland.
And they needed it for mass.
Yeah, so they plant it for mass, and they bring a hybrid. They breed some church, they breed small church, and they plant hybrid variety around the church, because it was after the phylloxera. So just after the phylloxera, you remember that the solution they thought was the best was to do hybrid between our variety and the American variety. So we still have some church. A lot of them has been destroyed, but some of them are still existing, and even some vineyards are subsisting around the church with some hybrid cultivars that are not so good, but not so good to make wine. They are neutral, and this is why after this, people understood that it was not the solution of phylloxera, that we have to do grafting. So then, after the next chapter for the vine in the area is a local government in the 2000s try to limit the rural exodus, and they try to create to increase income of the farmer. And so they find wine. And so they push the farmer to plant vine between 2,000 to 2,600 meters. And it's non-grafted, and it's mainly Cabernet Sauvignon, Cabernet Franc. It was in 2000. And then in 2008, Moët Hennessy have this vision of creating a Grand Cru from scratch in China. And so they asked Tony Jordan, that was working for them at this stage, to answer the question, is there a terroir capable to create a Grand Cru in China? And if yes, where it will be?
So let's talk about the people. So because you're working with 131 different families. And these are terraced vineyards, very small plots. How many different plots do you have now?
So we have 300 plots, but that are very small, out of 32 hectares. So they're already very small. But the thing is, even if they are small, we have so much variation from one piece of the block to the other piece that we have to subdivide in nearly 800 sub-blocks. So basically, we work with 800 sub-blocks. And it's not 800 terroirs, it's 35 terroirs, but each block, 300 blocks are subdivided in 700, and then they are regrouped in 35 terroirs. And for each of the terroirs, we try to do the perfect, which we customize the process to adapt to this terroir, from the pruning to the harvest. So we work in 4 villages, from 2,100 to 2,600 meters, and in each villages we've got these families that are taking care of their vineyard, this very small plot, and because it's very steep and it's very remote, they cannot go intensive agriculture. So it's same as 200 years ago in Europe.
So it's all done by hand.
It's all done by hand. You cannot go with machine inside.
So how many hours of work per hectare is that a year?
And so we have contract with the farmer for them to work 2,400 hours per hectare per year.
Okay, how would that compare to Bordeaux or Napa or somewhere?
So there is very few places people work 100% by hand. Usually they do harvest by hand, or they do some process by hand. But us, we do from the pruning to the harvest, the weeding, the topping up, the trimming, everything by hand. And so The only part that I understand that is working approximately the same, doing everything by hand because it's too steep, is in Switzerland. And my understanding is 800 hours per hectare per year. So with this 2,400 per hectare per year, hour per hectare per year, what is clear is there is no limit to creativity and accuracy, and we play with it every day.
Now, this is the 10th vintage of this wine, of Ao Yun. What does the 2022 vintage represent to you?
I think we have been very lucky with the climate, and the climate is the most expressive into our wine. So it's the closest to our dream, a wine that is expressing the place in a pure form, refine. We try to refine, and with less oak than before also, so it's more pure and fresh. We've got this freshness in the nose, and we've got this freshness in the mouth, but very refined.
I think it also represents, to me, when I see this wine, it represents thousands of decisions that have been made along the way. From Tony Jordan looking for the ideal, the perfect terroir, to building the winery, to finding the families, to work the land, to you coming in and bringing a new push and your vision, to every year working to refine it, to figure out which grape varieties. To me, it means 10 years, more than 10 years of work.
Yeah. To make a wine is thousands of decisions. In our case, we have to search during 4 years. So Tony quest during 4 years in China is an incredible adventure in itself. And then we have to wait to have this understanding of the climate, and finally a climate that for us is ideal. Indeed, it was very long to reach this point.
It's been a long trip, huh? A long voyage. So in terms of what you're doing now that's new, have you planted any new varieties?
We planted in between 2013 to 15. So we've got half of the vineyards that are planted by the villager in 2000 without rootstock. Cabernet Sauvignon, Cabernet Franc. And then when we arrived, and Tony Jordan's idea was to have the vineyard in 4 different villages, to have this diversity, and also to have half planted by the farmer without rootstock, half that we will plant. So we plant between 13 and 15, more Cabernet Sauvignon, more Cabernet Franc, because it's our main translator. But we had also Merlot, Syrah, and Petit Verdot. And more recently, we had a little bit of Sangiovese.
Okay, that's interesting.
But a very tiny quantity, just to see how it's
And
working.
Malbec? Any in Malbec?
Malbec, just a little bit also, yeah.
Is it interesting, or are you just testing it out?
We are just having the first grape of Malbec in 2025, this vintage. So it's very young. So we don't have so much feedback at this stage, but we will see in a few years. Yeah, possibly it's going to give a great wine.
One of your remits was to produce one of the finest red wines in the world that stands shoulder to shoulder with Bordeaux, with Burgundy, with Tuscany, with Napa. Have you succeeded?
Oh, the only way to know is to taste it blind and to wait for a few more years, I think. But what is clear is the first vintage that we did, the 2013. We still have some bottle. And it's tasting very well. It's aging very well.
Okay.
It's aging very well. We've got the freshness, the acidity, the quantity of tannin, the color to age very well. So I'm confident now in saying that it will age for 30, 50 years beautifully. This is the first point, but indeed we will need a few more decades for this, but at this stage it's going in the good direction. And then the second point is the tasting itself now, and to judge about this, you need to taste it blind. And some people organize we organize by ourselves also, but some wine lovers also in Hong Kong, Singapore, and China, they love to do blind tasting. They organize blind tasting, and usually Ao Yun is going very well in this blind tasting. There is one more particular blind tasting that has been organized in Hong Kong, that in 2020, I think it was in July 2020 during the COVID, the beginning of the COVID, and it was Chinese wine against French wine, mainly from Bordeaux, and Ao Yun has been tasted against first growth of Bordeaux, and 11% out of 14 prefer Ao Yun. So it's subjective. It's not professional, but it shows that we are going in the good direction.
Right. It's a great response. And how are collectors responding? Do you have collectors from around the world?
But this tasting was organized by Collector. And Collector in Asia, they love to do blind tasting. So they have a lot of other story. So there is, first of all, pride from the Chinese. I think they are proud now of what they can do in China.
I'm just thinking that a lot of our listeners wouldn't know, but there is actually a fairly long connection between French winemakers and China. The French have been there helping to develop the wine trade for a long time.
There is this domain Franco-Chinois, I think close to Beijing, that has been created by a joint venture French-Chinese. It was, I think, one of the first winery to have the objective to make a top quality wine 30 years ago or even more.
What are the different places you've made wine?
I made wine in South Africa. I stayed nearly 2 years in South Africa, and I stayed nearly 2 years in Chile also. I did one harvest in Burgundy, a little bit in Alsacia, and for sure some harvest in Bordeaux.
So you're a globe-trotting winemaker.
I choose this job to be able to travel and to meet different culture and to understand better the world and to grow. So this is what I did after I finished my study in Bordeaux. And for sure, it's helped me to grow.
Okay, terrific. Well, thank you so much for sharing this vintage with us and sharing your story. It's been fascinating as always. I hope you'll come back again.
Thank you very much, Suzanne. Thank you for your sharing this moment with me.
Well, I hope you enjoyed hearing about that remarkable wine and that you'll check out the rest of our podcast. We cover a wide variety of topics. Now, this podcast is produced in partnership with Wine Voices, powered by Wine Searcher, the world's largest wine and spirits database. We can offer our listeners a discount of 10% on a 12-month Wine Searcher Pro subscription. If you use the code JaneWS, Jane at checkout. Just follow the link in the description to get started. And please come back and join us for the next podcast.